Invasion had come to the town of Adano. An American corporal ran tautly along the dirty Via Favemi, and at the corner he threw himself down. He made certain arrangements with his light machine gun and then turned and beckoned to his friends to come forward. In the Via Calabria, in another part of town, a party of 3 crept forward like cats. An explosion, possibly of a mortar shell, at some distance to the north, but apparently inside the town, caused them to fall flat with a splash of dust. They waited on their bellies to see what would happen. An entire platoon ducked from grave to grave in the Capuchin cemetery high on the hill overlooking town. The entire platoon was scared. They were out of touch with their unit. They did not know the situation. They were near their objective, which was the rocky crest not far off, but they wanted to find out what was going on in the town before they moved on. All through the town of Adano, Americans were like this. They were not getting much resistance, but it was their first day of invasion, and they were tight in their muscles. But at one of the sulfur-loading jetties at the port, a major with a briefcase under his arm stepped from the sliding gangway of LCI number 9488, and he seemed to be wholly calm. "Borth," he said to the sergeant who followed him onto the jetty, "this is like coming home. How often I have dreamed this." And he bent over and touched the palm of his hand to the jetty, then dusted his palm off on his woolen pants. This man was Major Victor Joppolo, who had been named Senior Civil Affairs Officer of the town of Adano, representing Amgot. He was a man of medium height, with the dark skin of his parents, who were Italians from near Florence. He had a mustache. His face was round and his cheeks seemed cheerful, but his eyes were intense and serious. He was about 35. The sergeant with him was Leonard Borth, an MP, who was to be in charge of matters of security in Adano. He was to help weed out the bad Italians and make use of the good ones. Borth had volunteered to be the first to go into the town with the major. Borth had no fear. He cared about nothing. He was of Hungarian parentage, and he had lived many places, in Budapest, where he had taken pre-medical studies, in Rome, where he had been a correspondent for Pester Lloyd, in Vienna, where he had worked in a travel agency, in Marseille, where he had been secretary to a rich exporter, in Boston, where he had been a reporter for the Herald, and in San Francisco, where he sold radios. Still, he was less than 30. He was an American citizen and an enlisted man by choice. To him, the whole war was a cynical joke, and he considered his job in the war to make people take themselves less seriously. When the major touched Italian soil, Borth said, "You're too sentimental." The major said, "Maybe, but you will be the same when you get to Hungary." "Never, not me." The major looked toward the town and said, "Do you think it's safe now?" Borth said, "Why not?" "Then how do we go?" Borth unfolded a map case deliberately. He put a freckled finger on the celluloid cover and said, "Here, by the Via Barino, as far as the Via of October 28th, and the piazza is at the top of the Via of October 28th. "October 28th, the major said. "What is that, October 28th? "That's the date of Mussolini's march on Rome in 1922, Borth said. "It's the day when Mussolini thinks he began to be a big shot." Borth was very good at memory. They started walking. The major said, "I've lost all count, so what is today?" "July 10th. "We will call it the Via of July 10. "So, you're renaming the streets already. Next you'll be raising monuments, Major Joppolo, first to an unknown soldier, then to yourself. I don't trust you men who are so sentimental and have too damn much conscience." "Cut the kidding," the major said. There was an echo in the way he said it, as if he were a boy having been called wop by others in school. In spite of the gold maple leaf of rank on the collar, there was an echo. The two men walked up the Via Barino. There was nobody in the street. All the people had either fled to the hills or were hiding in bomb shelters and cellars. The houses of this street were poor gray affairs, two-story houses of gray brick with gray shutters, all dusted over with gray dust, which had been thrown up from bomb craters and shell holes. Here and there, where a house had been hit, gray bricks had cascaded into the gray street. At the corner of the third alley running off the via of October 28, the two men came on a dead Italian woman. She had been dressed in black. Her right leg was blown off, and the flies, for some reason, preferred the dark, sticky pool of blood and dust to her stump. "Awful," the Major said, for although the blood was not yet dry, nevertheless there was already a beginning of a sweet but vomitous odor. "It's a hell of a note," he said, "that we had to do that to our friends." "Friends," said Borth. "That's a laugh." "It wasn't them, not the ones like her," the Major said. "They weren't our enemies. My mother's mother must have been like her. It wasn't the poor ones like her. It was the bunch up there where we're going, those crooks in the city hall." "Be careful," Borth said, and his face showed that he was teasing the Major again. "You're going to have your office in the city hall. Be careful you don't get to be a crook, too." "Lay off," the Major said.